गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री पतञ्जलये नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि। आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। Namaste. I am Dr. Neil Kulkarni, www.adhiyoga.com. This video is made on a request from some students who wish to know two things. Number one, they want me to give a gist of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in a very short time, which is not so easy task. And number two is they want my comments or opinions about what can be done in day-to-day life in order to use or apply the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So I will now start the first task to describe the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in short. Of course, many things will be missing as it is not easy to put them in short. Initially, I would like to inform you that Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are written in Sanskrit language, which is not a colloquial Sanskrit language. It is a philosophical Sanskrit language which uses the terms which are used in Indian philosophy in the Vedic literature. Therefore, the meanings of those words cannot be found from the Sanskrit dictionary of average kind. One may use Monier-Williams dictionary, however, it will be a very arduous task. Therefore, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali should be studied with a teacher who is extremely knowledgeable in the Vedic literature as well as in Sanskrit language. Anyway, second is the same thing applies to the authors, that only the literature of such authors as I described earlier should be studied in order to understand them correctly. Secondly, they are extremely bound grammatically, so the each word and its grammatical version should be understood. Otherwise, it will not be possible to get the correct meaning. if one wants to study the commentary, they must study Vyasa's commentary, which is written in 5th century AD. It is also believed that Vyasa himself in that commentary is Patanjali himself. Anyway, now I want to tell you a little bit about origin of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in very short. The Vedic literature starts with prayers to different deities which do not have form, but they are natural entities such as sun, rain, earth, sleep, etc. These deities are supposed to provide welfare or well-being of the entire universe, which of course includes human beings. So these prayers are called mantras, or they are in a part called Sanhitas. They are also called suktas. Using these prayers, different rituals are made and they are performed on a regular basis either by priests who are extremely knowledgeable about how to perform these rituals, or they are performed by anybody who wants to perform them as long as they obey the rules of that ritual. These rituals are in Yajurveda and this is also part of Sanhita only. Later, there is an explanation of how to use these mantras in the rituals or application to different circumstances. This is called as Brahmanas, which are the texts, and also Aranyakas, where this explanation is also combined with philosophical ideas. Once the philosophical evolution took place, even the original mantras are questioned at places, as well as the original mantras are explored in philosophical way. At this point, a new era in the Vedic literature starts called Upanishads. There are hundreds of Upanishads, out of which some are popular, and the philosophy of life, which includes the entire universe, is embedded in Upanishads. This philosophy is well thought and discussed and arrived at the conclusion. Therefore, Upanishadic ideas are culmination of human philosophy in general, including all the philosophy in the world, uses the ideas from Upanishad such as Aristotle, Plato, and other philosophers. Many religions of the world like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they find their roots in the Hinduism, which is a wrong name given to Upanishadic philosophy by the religious people. So Upanishads are philosophical texts and not religious texts, but today they are called Hinduism. In the Upanishadic texts, the ultimate aim is to remove the total sorrow, remove the sorrow in the human life totally, not part by part, but totally. This is to be done in various ways. Out of these evolves what is called as system of philosophy, which gives step-by-step method of arriving at a status called Nishreyas, where there is no dissatisfaction or sorrow in the human life. There are 6 darshanas, systems of philosophy, where these methods are described and they are accepted as standard, whereas there are other darshanas which are not accepted as standard, however they are equally powerful and followed. One of these darshanas is called Sankhya Darshan, in which the epistemology of the human life, which contains the human being, which is called Jivatma, the world, which is called Jagat, and the entity, which is optional but is responsible for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the universe, which sometimes is called Brahman, sometimes called Ishvara, Parameshwara, Paramatman, etc. This is the third entity which is optionally considered. In the Sankhya Darshan, there is no concept of Ishvara or God, only the human being, which is Jivatman, also called as Purusha, and the universe, which is called Prakriti, which is a perceptible universe. In the Sankhya Darshan, the philosophy in short is Purush and Prakriti are bound to each other for whatever reason, which is not given in the philosophy, is causing the sorrow. So the separation of the Purush and Prakriti is the method described in the Sankhya philosophy or Sankhya Darshan. However, the actual practice of obtaining this separation is not fully expounded in the Sankhya Darshan and is not described to an extreme practicable methodology. The other darshan, which is called Yoga Darshan, has totally accepted the Sankhya epistemology and also added other ideas which are profound ideas such as Ishvara and some other ideas from the Upanishads, also called as Vedanta, and a extremely practicable method to achieve the Nishreyas is described in the Yoga Darshan. The Nishreyas in the Yoga Darshan is called Kaivalya, which is same as Mukti in Vedanta, but the nature of the Kaivalya is Purush is separated from the Prakriti. In the Yoga Darshan, as I said, some other ideas such as Ishwar, etc. are added. Yoga Darshan is composed in sutra form by Patanjali, and as I said, this is a very complex Sanskrit text and needs a very careful and proper study in order to get correct meaning of the Yoga Darshan. Now, I will explain to you in short what the Yoga Darshan philosophy and methodology is. Firstly, I will have to describe in short what Sankhya Darshan epistemology is, which is going to be extremely short for the purpose of this video. Sankhya Darshan states that Purush or soul or Atman or Jivatma is somehow attached to the Prakriti, which is the material universe. Due to this association, a perceptible universe called Drushya is produced. This Drushya entirely contains only three elements, which are Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, which are the basic ingredients or constituents of original Prakriti called Mula Prakriti. Depending on the amount of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, different more elements are created for the purpose of human life. The human life consists of buddhi, or in simple language intellect, which is not in English meaning of intellect, but intellect is a facility or faculty through which perception is possible to reach the Purush. Then comes ahankar, which is the individual ego, which makes a person aware of or wrongly aware of its independent existence. From there comes the mind and the actions, organs of action and organs of perception. Organs of perception, as you have to understand, are the part of the mind called indriyas, jnanendriyas. So they are part of the mind, and the part of the mind indriyas are connected to the physical indriyas, which are part of the body, such as eye is connected with the brain is connected with the mind part called chakshu indriya, etc. And then there is 5 gross elements and 5 subtle elements. The 5 subtle elements, they mix to create 5 gross elements, and the human life revolves around interacting with these elements. Now, the beginning of human life in terms of Purush associating with the Mula Prakriti is not known as far as the time is concerned. So the timing is not known when it started. However, the only thing which is known is the current human life, and this current human life is associated or connected with the past human life, and one can go back until one's mind is developed. However, almost all the common people cannot go back beyond the current life, but the yogis may be able to go beyond current life to the past 1, 2 or many lives. Only the Ishvara, such as Lord Krishna, is able to know all the lives, as he says in Bhagavad Gita. Now, this human life never has complete satisfaction. So it is always having some sorrow. Sometimes it seems that it has joy, but that joy ultimately converts into dissatisfaction, and therefore the total satisfaction is not possible, and therefore removal of sorrow or dukkha nivrutti is the basic aim of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. For doing this, the Yoga Sutras proposes basically a 8 steps method, and that method is extremely systematically planned, called Ashtanga Yoga, where 8 steps are there. The first 5 steps deal with the environment or the life of a human being outside Chitta, which is a faculty made up of intellect, ego and mind. The definition of Chitta is not there in any Vedic literature as well as Yoga Sutras. Therefore, I spent years to come to this definition, and that is accepted by scholars by now. So again, to define the chitta, it is made up of intellect, ego and mind. Anyway, now this chitta is called internal organ of a human being, and all other faculty of the human being is called external, and it deals with the external world. Chitta has impressions which are created by the previous working of the chitta and external organs. Once these impressions are created, they are called chitta vritti, that is modification of the chitta, and this modification can be very strong or very mild, and it also can be in the currently expressible stage, or it can be in a very dormant stage. The indriyas which connect the chitta to the outside world in a common person's life have a tendency to only perceive the external world and get involved in the external world, and then pass the perceptions to the internal world and form impressions inside the chitta. And these impressions inside the chitta are the mental life of a human being, and this is the cause of sorrow. In the Patanjali, he proposes 8 steps called Ashtanga Yoga. In the first 5 steps, he brings the chitta which is going out through the indriyas to the external world to the internal world. Therefore, the first 5 steps called Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar, the chitta comes inside, and now the chitta resides in chitta itself and perceives, in fact, those chitta vrittis rather than perceiving the external world. Therefore, without perceiving any external world, the chitta is perceiving the internal world which contains chitta vrittis. After this start, the practice of the last 3 limbs, where the chitta vrittis are to be sublimated to make them zero. These chitta vrittis are to be suppressed, which is called as nirodh, is to be done by 3 practices, starting with dharana, then developing dharana into dhyanam, and dhyanam into what is called samadhi practice, and not samadhi result. So once the samadhi practice, called as total concentration, where the human being forgets his own identity, tadevartha matra nirvasam swarupa shunyamiva samadhi. Once this practice is developed, then the person actually becomes really spiritual and comes to know chitta vrittis in a way he can suppress them. Until the person reaches samadhi state, the real chitta vritti nirodh does not start. Once samadhi practice is mastered, where dharana, dhyan, samadhi becomes totally mastered, is called sanyam, then the person can apply that sanyam on different objects or different goals and achieve higher results. All these higher results are to be used for making samadhi more and more stable. Tasya bhumishu viniyogaha. Third chapter. So once a person goes beyond the original samadhi practice, he goes through various levels of samadhi, such as savitarka, nirvitarka, savichar, nirvichar, etc. Then he reaches finally a samadhi where there is no chitta vritti left. This samadhi is called nirbij. Tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodhan nirbijas samadhi. The last sutra of the first chapter. Now, once the nirbij samadhi takes place, the person gets totally self-realized. Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. Yogaha chittavritti nirodha tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. Until the nirbij samadhi takes place, the Purush identifies with the chitta vrittis. Vritti sarupyam itaratra 1.4. So once the nirbij samadhi takes place, the person gets self-realized. Tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. At this point, the person becomes totally spiritual and is not anymore interested in the external phenomena. However, the person still continues to live in the external world due to the past karma, and then spends the remaining time to resolve the past karma, to nullify it. He may do it very rapidly or very slowly. However, one has to resolve the past karma. Once the past karma is resolved, the person reaches what is called kaivalya. Purushartha shunyanam gunanam pratiprasavah kaivalyam swarupa pratishtava chiti shakti riti. 4.34, the last sutra of Patanjali. Anyway, therefore, in short, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are meant for one to achieve samadhi state first and get self-realized, and later to get liberation. Therefore, one can understand that Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are not written for day-to-day materialistic life. They are written for spiritual life. So this fact should be understood by anybody, including a common person. Now, the interesting part is, just like when you study any deeper science such as nuclear science, you will come to know ordinary sciences such as laws of gravitation, laws of electricity, etc. you will come to know. So therefore, when one follows Yoga Sutras of Patanjali ardently, he or she will come to know the working of human mind in deeper and deeper levels depending on the practice. Once the functioning of the human mind is understood, one will be able to perform the day-to-day life activities in a much more efficient ways and make the life at least comfortable and even joyful. Therefore, a common man has to first decide whether he or she is interested in the final goals of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali or wants to follow Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in a milder way or medium way and try to understand the mind and later use it for day-to-day life. One caution is, one should never interpret the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali to be meant for common life. That should never be told. such as Yoga Sutras of Patanjali have nothing to do with yogasanas or yoga exercises. It has nothing to do with health and fitness, or it has nothing to do with relationships, or however, because one will come to know the functioning of the mind at deeper levels, one can improve their health and fitness as well as relationships. In Adiyoga Darshan, which is the modern darshan which I composed in 1998, the basis of the Adiyoga Darshan is to make the life happy, whether by following materialistic life or by following spiritual life or by obtaining the liberation, is left to the individual, because only individual's karma decides that. Therefore, one may legitimately use the knowledge of the mind to achieve one's individual goals. However, one should again to caution, not interpret that Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are trying to make the day-to-day life better. Yoga Sutra Patanjali are giving a perfect methodology. Now, Yoga Sutra Patanjali also adds some other elements such as devotion to Ishwar and surrender to Ishwar, which is called Ishwara Pranidhan, and some other practices also are given, which I am not detailing here. Now, how to use the Yoga Sutra Patanjali for day-to-day life? So, as I said, from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, you will not know at all how to maintain your health and fitness, because health depends on the food. There is no sutra on the food. There is no sutra on yoga exercises. The pranayam which is described in Patanjali is not for health and fitness. It is meant for concentration of mind. Dharana sucha yogyata manasaha. Chapter 2. Now, the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, once you come to know the nature of the mind and functioning of the mind, in order to get to this level, one has to practice some parts of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and definitely one must get into at least dharana and dhyana. That means one should practice meditation. Without practicing meditation, Yoga Sutra of Patanjali is totally useless. So you must practice meditation right from the beginning, not later. Right from the beginning, you must practice meditation. That is my thought. Now, once you come to know the nature of the mind, you will be able to use that mind for whatever you wish. However, to come to know the mind is a very tricky matter, and to even get established in meditation is a very, very tricky matter. So, there are some things which are on the way one must perform. So, I will now like to add some elements which are not in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So, those elements I did add there in the Yoga Sutras when I wrote the Patanjali code. So, one of them is called Yukta Ahar and Vihar. So, the nutritional aspect and Vihar means a proper movements, including the yoga exercises, should be added there. They are not there in Yoga Sutras. Patanjali is not talking about yoga exercises. So, you can add them. That means one should make oneself physically healthy, not only by following Ayurveda and some older methodologies. One must know the modern nutrition and the findings and one also must know the current circumstances of the environment, etc. So one should make oneself healthy. This is not a part of the Patanjali. Now, the Patanjali's disciplines, which are Yama Niyam, are extremely difficult to follow in the life. Not only in the modern life, but even in the ancient life. It's almost impossible to follow for common man. So the common man should not feel bad if he cannot follow those disciplines. For example, one of the discipline is called brahmacharya, which means sexual celibacy. It is impossible for a common man to follow this method. So one must not get into that method at all in the modern life as well as ancient life. One must adjust to one's capacity and follow the disciplines only to what is possible and be happy with it as long as one is progressing in the mental level. Then the first 4 limbs up to pranayam can be followed by a common person. Pratyahara is going to be very difficult, so one may even skip it and try to get to the mental level. Pranayam is optional, pranayam is not must at all. Of course, pranayam is more powerful and more important in the yoga practice than asanas, there is no doubt. However, it is an optional because it is a very difficult process to do in the hectic modern life. Anyway, common person can get up to the pranayam and even up to pratyahara and try to get into the mental arena. Now, the next suggestion which I want to give is, if you want to really call yourself common, the best method is Ishvara Pranidhan. Not only best, but it is the only method. So you must do the Ishvara Pranidhan and you will be able to skip all the stages of Patanjali if you follow the Ishvara Pranidhan correctly. So Ishvara Pranidhan must not be skipped. It must be followed before meditation even. That means for a common person, the yoga practice should start with Ishvara Pranidhan. Then it must go into meditation and then only go into disciplines, etc. to what is possible. Anyway, once you come to the mind, one of the stage, a milestone on that mental practice must come to a peaceful and happy state of mind. Unless you come to peaceful and happy state of mind, meditation will be impossible. It is called Chitta Prasadanam, and that is what the common person should aim at. So common person should completely aim at Chitta Prasadanam. As soon as Chitta Prasadanam is reached, a common person will understand that he is able to do the day-to-day activities in much better. His understanding of the life will be, of not life but living, will be much better and will be able to make those activities better. After this, it is left to the individual to go in higher aspects of yoga practice, to go into samadhi and then later into liberation concept. So this is what I wish to tell about Yoga Sutras and what a common person can do. If you want to know specifically what a common person should do in terms of actual actions, we need to have a class where each person has to be looked at individually and a practice suggested. Om Shantihi.